Hey everybody, Jimmy Smith back. This time about what I am calling Ronda Rousey's grievance tour, where if you have not paid attention to it, and if you're in MMA media, I don't know how you haven't been exposed to it somehow, her criticisms of MMA fans, of Khabib, of Joe Rogan, basically nonstop since she started doing media, and obviously her complaints about her neurological problems and stuff like that, while still training for a comeback that makes no sense. But the idea that she is just trashing everybody, and I made comments about Ronda Rousey. I was with SiriusXM, so this was a couple years ago now. I don't remember exactly when. It's on my channel. You can check it out. And what I talked about was how the people behind the scenes who had to work with her, sound people, camera people, the people doing the nuts and bolts in the interviews, all had horror stories about Ronda Rousey being abusive to them. And the interesting thing to me was, if someone's putting a microphone on you, you have to interact with that person for 15 seconds. Right? They put the microphone on, they say test, test, and they go sit down and they make sure the audio levels are good. You have to really be a special kind of a-hole to verbally abuse a camera guy or the audio guy or any of the tech people putting up lights, and none of them could stand her. And that was interesting because you got to really go out of your way. You got to really try. And you can listen to the original video that I did. It's floating around on the internet. It's all over the place. One of the reasons it got the traction it did is I don't do that very often. If you know this channel, you know me, I typically don't trash the promotions I worked for. I don't trash the people I worked with. I don't do that stuff. I'm not a hot take machine. Because at a certain point, the way I see it is you lose credibility. If you know ESPN and Stephen A. Smith, when he talks about the Cowboys, I don't listen. Because his kind of shtick is that he can't stand the Cowboys. He's always trashing the Cowboys. Now, Cowboys suck, and I'm no fan of the Cowboys. But it's a shtick. It's a bit. I'm not listening to his analysis because his thing is that he's always trashing the Cowboys. Once you're known for negativity or you're known for hot takes, you're known for this kind of stuff, they lose their impact. Because you're seen as someone who just does that. That's what they do. And the comparison I'm making between me and Ronda Rousey is Ronda Rousey's trashing everybody kind of in a row. These people or the organizations or whatever she's talking about, you can have valid criticisms with these entities or people or fighters or whatever it is, but if this is what you're doing all the time, nobody's listening because it comes across as you're just a bitter person. That's what it comes across as. And that's how Ronda Rousey is coming across, as I said, with what I'm calling her grievance tour, where she's just kind of being negative about everybody. She's confirming what MMA fans already thought about her because of her exit and the way she treated and spoke about fighters and fans and the Ultimate Fighter and all that stuff. And, she's kind of confirming an idea that MMA fans kind of already had of her. So that's the tough. When you go after everybody, no one's really listening to any valid criticisms you might have, as much as, oh, there goes Ronda Rousey again, doing Ronda Rousey stuff. And so, if you haven't been exposed to it, right, this was on the Bert Kreischer podcast. MMA fans and the media are the most "what have you done for us lately" crowd of any sport. Like, you look at WWE, and they have such reverence for their legends. And in MMA, the second you're not on top, you're not shit, and you never were shit. You brought up Chuck Liddell. Chuck Liddell, when he was on top, oh my God, he's the best. The second he loses, Chuck Liddell ain't shit. He was never shit. Then there was Rampage Jackson. Oh God, he's an ex-Mike Tyson. He's so great. The second he loses, he ain't shit. He never was shit. GSP, same thing. He loses. He's not shit. He never was. Anderson Silva, oh my God, he was this mythical creature for a while, like this ninja who would hypnotize everyone. The second he loses, oh, Anderson ain't shit. He never was. She goes on about Fedor Emelianenko and the same thing. And then she says, I think the only reason why MMA fans have their lips so planted firmly at the base of Khabib's you-know-what is because he retired when he reached his limit. If he kept fighting until he reached his limit, everybody would be like, Khabib, he ain't shit, he never was. And they're like that with everybody. Here's the issue, Ronda. Fans didn't turn on you. You got a lot of fan support until they started seeing how you were as a person outside the octagon. The Ultimate Fighter when she was on with Miesha Tate, was the first real crack in the armor. She came off as a terrible person. She just did. She beats Miesha, refuses to shake her hand, still bitter and angry. Fans booed her after that. She loses to Holly Holm in devastating fashion and disappears. Never gave her flowers, didn't show up to the press conference famously. Same thing with Amanda Nunes. Came back, got housed, and was out. Never gave those flowers to the people who beat her. Never showed any humility, never showed any grace. Fans like that. They really do. Also, a lot of the fighters she's talking about, be it Anderson Silva, Chuck Liddell, Rampage kind of, the idea that they hung on way too long. Way too long. No one ever leaves at the right time. Khabib left undefeated. Oh, he sucks. Khabib hangs on and loses 10 in a row. Then he sucks. Like, there is no right time to get out. And her criticizing when fighters got out and how it affects their legacy, I thought Anderson Silva held on too long. I thought BJ Penn definitely held on too long. GSP got out on top. And also, the idea that GSP ain't shit after the Matt Serra loss is absolutely absurd. He came back and did arguably his best work after the Matt Serra loss. I think that's ridiculous, her criticism there. This idea that fighters do hurt their legacy by hanging on way too long. Anderson Silva and BJ Penn really hurt their legacies. Chuck Liddell hung on too long, and every loss was just a shattering knockout that hurt his brain. So, the idea that fighters do tend to hang on too long and hurt their legacies. But you can't criticize Khabib for getting out undefeated at the right time, and he gave back to the sport. He's a coach. I see him all the time with his guys. I've spoken to Khabib a couple times with PFL for his guys fighting there. They gave something back at the end. Khabib gave something back at the end. Ronda Rousey, I thought, got out at the right time. She had 2 devastating losses. She wasn't there with the elite anymore, and she got out. It's the idea that she never acknowledged it or gave back. She had nothing good to say about MMA fans, once again, trashing them. There's a great documentary about Lance Armstrong called The Armstrong Lie. And there was this cycling journalist and about Lance's comeback in 2009. And he said, why couldn't he have just said thank you? It's been a great career. Thank you. He had to make a point about coming back in 2009 to prove he was clean when he wasn't clean. And it caused all these other problems and obviously got busted, and we all know the whole story. But I love that line of why couldn't he have just said thank you? It's been a great career. You guys have been great fans. I really appreciate it. Khabib had that moment with his retirement. Ronda Rousey did not. And once again, it's all negativity about everybody else. Rather than, hey, I have millions of dollars because of you. And as much as you might have issues with the WWE or the UFC, you are in the position you are in because of what they gave you. And what you worked for them. And they honored their contracts and you honored yours, and here you are. So the Joe Rogan, comments were, I don't think, didn't say anything I think fans get, because he's talking with Bert Kreischer about, would I train with Joe Rogan? And talking about, obviously fighting Ronda Rousey and should I, train with Joe Rogan? And basically, I'm paraphrasing, he's not an expert. He's just a guy with a big fan base. That's how Joe has always approached broadcasting, and that's how the fans of Joe see Joe. Joe, to me, when I listen, and I don't listen to commentary these days. I since God, a long time. I generally mute it. I don't listen because I don't need it. But Joe's commentary is approached like a fan, right? He gets super excited. He's very verbal about stuff. He tends to go off when something exciting happens, blah, 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 blah. He approaches it like a fan and behaves like a fan. And people who like Joe Rogan like that kind of commentary. And Joe's not the kind of guy who makes the kinds of comments, typically, that infuriate you if you never stepped in the octagon yourself. If you never stepped into a cage and fought in MMA professionally, which Joe Rogan never did. He doesn't make those comments about, I would do this, and this, like the things that kind of drive you nuts. He doesn't do that often. You either like Joe's fan style of commentary or you don't. And his fans really like it, and the people who don't like him don't. That's it, right? But once again, this idea of going after Joe Rogan, okay, I don't know why necessarily what he would have done to you, right? And also, she's stating an obvious point that he didn't do it for a living, but the fans of Joe Rogan know that. The fans of his commentary know that. That's how he's always approached the sport. And so I found it a little weird. So, having worked for, once again, both of these organizations, okay, UFC, WWE, having worked around Joe Rogan, whatever, I have a pool in my house because of WWE, right? I am able to work as much as I do, right? I have another job offer. I had it last week. We'll see if it comes to fruition, and I end up doing it. But easy conversations, guys. They don't call me and not know who I am and what I've done. I have called a world title in every combat sport. I have worked for the WWE. I've worked for the UFC. I've called freaking WrestleMania. And having worked for those people, I'm allowed to have the life I have, which is extremely comfortable and very, very good. I have no lack of work. And a lot of that is because of the promotions I worked for. And would I have liked to continue working for the UFC? Yeah, of course I would have. Do I have complaints about WWE and UFC and blah, blah, blah? Sure, I could sit here and gripe and complain and bitch about it. They paid me while I worked for them. They honored the contracts I signed with them. And when it was over, and I moved on to other stuff. And part of the reason I was able to move on to other stuff was because I had worked for the biggest names in the business. And I'm grateful for that. I am much more grateful than I am bitter or angry or upset. There's more joy than grievance about these things. And I didn't make a fraction of the money she made, and I didn't work a fraction of the time that she worked for these promotions. But that's what you have to take from it. Is I got the life I have now partly because I worked for these people. And every time you come out and you trash somebody or you go off on a promotion that you once worked for, that once paid you, number one, anybody else is going to go, okay, she's going to do that to us too at some point. And the idea that you just aren't showing to the fans and to the people who made you any gratitude. And to me, that's the bitter part of this whole situation. She's not griping about other people's pay. She's not doing this for anybody else. She's not saying I made a lot of money, but fighter pay in the UFC isn't good, or WWE isn't good, or blah, 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 or whatever. People get hurt, blah, blah, blah. She's not advocating. She's not being an advocate for anyone else. It's about her own personal grievance while she made millions of dollars from these promotions. And these fans that she say turned on her, which is effing absurd. They just found out the kind of person you are and didn't like you. And you never showed gratitude to the sport or to them or, any kind of dignity or class about the end of your career. That's what fans are upset about. You never said thank you. It's been a great career. I have a great life. Thank you. On that same podcast interview with Bert Kreischer, he said, was there any chance you come back to the octagon? She goes, I have everything I want. I have everything I need. There's nothing in my life that could entice me to come back. There you go. And where did you get that from? The UFC and the WWE. That's you can have your grievances, you can have your problems. They shouldn't be as big or as public as the gratitude for being where you are, where you don't have to go back. That's what I think. Give me your comments in the comments section. Let me know what you think. Talking to you later.